Imagine standing on the vast Siberian tundra at midnight in summer, where the sun never sets, and realizing you are still inside one single country. A country bigger than Pluto, a land that stretches across 11 time zones, holds 1/4 of the world's fresh water in a single lake, and has shaped human history like few others. From Viking princes founding the first Russian state, to Tsars who built the world's largest empire, to Bolshevik revolutionaries who redrew the map of the 20th century, to a modern superpower that launched the first satellite into space and continues to dominate global headlines every single day. Russia is not just a country. It is a saga of survival, ambition, and reinvention. It has conquered continents, survived invasions that crushed lesser nations, and produced geniuses from Tolstoy to Gagarin. Today, in 2026, as the world watches its every move, we are going deep, all the way from the 9th century to right now. No dry textbooks, just the real story. Blood, glory, betrayal, and power. Meet Viking warriors and paranoid Tsars, enlightened empresses and iron-willed dictators. We will witness golden ages of culture alongside dark chapters of terror, famine, and total war. This is history that feels like a blockbuster movie. If you love epic stories, stay with me for the full journey. This is Russia Unveiled. Our story begins more than 1100 years ago in the dense forests and river networks of Eastern Europe. Slavic tribes farmed the land, but the great river highways connected them to the wider world. Around the year 862, according to the ancient Russian primary chronicle, feuding tribes invited a Varangian prince named Rurik to rule in Novgorod and bring order. Rurik's dynasty, the Rurikids, would shape Russian history for centuries. His successor, Oleg the Prophet, expanded aggressively. In 882, he captured Kiev on the mighty Dnieper River and made it the capital of Kievan Rus. This unified the northern and southern Slavic lands into a powerful federation. Kievan Rus boomed as a trade hub. Merchants sent furs, wax, honey, and slaves south to Constantinople and the Islamic world, returning with silver, silks, spices, and wine. The real transformation came under Vladimir the Great, who ruled from 980 to 1015. A pagan warrior at first, Vladimir faced a crossroads. In 988, he converted to Orthodox Christianity after envoys described the splendor of the liturgy in Constantinople's Hagia Sophia. He ordered mass baptisms in the Dnieper River, married a Byzantine princess, and built churches across the land. Christianity brought literacy, Byzantine law, and cultural prestige, tying Rus firmly to the Eastern Orthodox world. Kievan Rus reached its golden age under Yaroslav the Wise, who ruled from 1019 to 1054. He codified laws in the Ruskaya Pravda, founded libraries, and married his daughters and sisters into royal families across Europe. Kiev became one of Europe's largest and richest cities, its golden-domed churches rivaling Constantinople itself. Art, icon painting, and chronicle writing flourished, but unity proved fragile. The Rurikid custom of dividing lands among many sons led to endless feuds. By the late 12th century, power fragmented among regional centers like Vladimir Suzdal, Galicia-Volhynia, and the merchant republic of Novgorod. The stage was set for disaster. In 1223, a Mongol reconnaissance force defeated a Rus coalition at the Kalka River. Then in 1237 to 1240, the full storm arrived. Batu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, led the Golden Horde. Major cities burned. Ryazan, Vladimir, and finally Kiev, in 1240, sacked so brutally that chronicles said one could hardly find a living soul. The Mongols imposed the yoke, heavy tribute, military service, and census-taking. Russian princes had to travel to the Horde's capital on the Volga to beg for the right to rule their own lands. Alexander Nevsky of Novgorod chose pragmatism. He submitted to the Mongols while defeating Swedish and Teutonic invaders in the west at the Battle of the Neva in 1240 and on the ice of Lake Peipus in 1242. The Mongol yoke lasted nearly 250 years. It stunted development, yet in the shadows, one city began to rise. By the 14th century, Moscow, once a minor outpost, grew stronger under shrewd princes. Ivan I, called Kalita, or Moneybag, collected Mongol tribute efficiently, kept some for himself, and bought up neighboring lands. His descendants continued the strategy. The symbolic turning point came in 1380 at the Battle of Kulikovo. Prince Dmitry Donskoy led a coalition of Russian forces to victory over a Mongol army. The yoke was not yet broken, but the myth of Mongol invincibility was shattered. In 1480, Ivan III, known as Ivan the Great, finally refused tribute. The two armies faced each other across the Ugra River, and the Mongols simply withdrew. Ivan married a Byzantine princess, adopted the double-headed eagle as Russia's symbol, rebuilt the Kremlin in red brick, and began calling himself Tsar of all Rus. He conquered the great merchant republic of Novgorod in 1478, ending its independence and centralizing power. His grandson, Ivan IV, took the title officially, crowned Tsar in 1547 at age 17 in the Cathedral of the Assumption. He became the first official Tsar of all Russia. Tall, intelligent, and increasingly unstable, Ivan expanded Russia dramatically eastward. In 1552, he conquered the Tatar Khanate of Kazan after a long and brutal siege, opening the Volga River. Astrakhan fell in 1556. Cossack explorer Yermak began the conquest of Siberia soon after. Ivan created Russia's first standing army, the Streltsy Musketeers, introduced a new legal code, and called assemblies known as the Zemsky Sobor. Trade with England opened through the White Sea, but after the death of his beloved first wife Anastasia, paranoia took hold. He created the Oprichnina, a state within a state of black-robed loyalists who terrorized the nobility. Mass executions followed. In 1570, he sacked the city of Novgorod, killing thousands. In a fit of rage, in 1581, he struck and killed his own heir. When Ivan the Terrible died in 1584, Russia was far larger but deeply scarred. His weak son, Fyodor, left no strong successor. Boris Godunov ruled first as regent, then as Tsar, but a terrible famine from 1601 to 1603 killed up to a third of the population. Pretenders appeared. The time of troubles from 1598 to 1613 brought chaos. False Dimitris backed by Poland, Polish troops occupying the Kremlin, Swedish intervention, banditry, and civil war. Russia stood on the brink of collapse. Salvation came in 1613 when a national assembly, the Zemsky Sobor, elected 16-year-old Michael Romanov as Tsar. The Romanov dynasty had begun. It would rule for over 300 years. Michael and his father, Patriarch Filaret, restored order. The country slowly recovered. By the late 17th century, Russia lagged behind Europe in technology and military power. Then came Peter I, later called Peter the Great. Nearly 7 feet tall, bursting with energy, Peter toured Europe incognito during the Great Embassy of 1697 to 1698. He worked in Dutch shipyards, studied anatomy, fortification, and shipbuilding. He returned determined to westernize Russia, even if by force. Peter built a modern professional army and navy. He defeated Sweden in the long Great Northern War, winning a decisive victory at Poltava in 1709. In 1703, he founded a new capital, St. Petersburg, on swampy land along the Narva River, calling it a window to Europe. The project cost thousands of lives. He forced nobles to shave their beards, wear Western clothes, and serve the state. He introduced the table of ranks based on merit, a new calendar, a simplified alphabet, and secular schools. He brought the church under direct state control through the Holy Synod. In 1721, after victory over Sweden, the Senate proclaimed him emperor. Peter had dragged Russia into the modern age, but at great human and financial cost. He died in 1725, exhausted. After Peter, a series of rulers followed, including his daughter Elizabeth, who continued cultural westernization and founded Moscow University. But the most remarkable was Catherine II, known as Catherine the Great. A German princess who married the weak Peter III, she orchestrated his overthrow in 1762 and ruled for 34 years. She corresponded with Voltaire and Diderot, promoted Enlightenment ideas, yet expanded the empire ruthlessly. She annexed Crimea in 1783, participated in the partitions of Poland, and fought successful wars against the Ottomans, gaining access to the Black Sea. The Black Sea Fleet was born, education and the arts flourished, the Hermitage collections began, but for the peasants, serfdom grew harsher. When the Cossack leader Pugachev led a massive peasant rebellion in 1773 to 1775, Catherine crushed it brutally. By her death in 1796, Russia had become the largest empire on earth. The 19th century brought both glory and growing cracks. Tsar Alexander I defeated Napoleon in 1812. When the French invaded with the largest army Europe had ever seen, the Russians burned Moscow rather than surrender. Winter and scorched earth tactics destroyed the Grande Armée. Russian troops chased Napoleon all the way to Paris in 1814. Russia became known as the gendarme of Europe. Yet at home, autocracy remained absolute. Serfdom kept roughly 90% of the population in a form of bondage. Alexander II finally abolished serfdom in 1861, freeing 23 million peasants, though many remained trapped by redemption payments and lack of land. He introduced zemstvo, local councils, judicial reform, and universal military conscription. But revolutionary radicals assassinated him in 1881. His son Alexander III reversed liberalization with policies of Russification. Industrialization accelerated under Finance Minister Witte, and construction of the Trans-Siberian Railway began. The last Tsar, Nicholas II, came to the throne in 1894. Defeat in the Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905 exposed Russia's weaknesses. On Bloody Sunday in 1905, troops fired on peaceful protesters in St. Petersburg. Nicholas reluctantly created the Duma parliament, but he never fully accepted limits on his power. World War I proved fatal. Millions of Russian soldiers died in poorly equipped offensives. Shortages, inflation, and the influence of Rasputin at court fueled discontent. In February 1917, strikes and mutinies forced Nicholas to abdicate. A provisional government tried to rule alongside the Petrograd Soviet. Vladimir Lenin returned from exile in April and demanded all power to the Soviets. In October 1917, the Bolsheviks seized key buildings in Petrograd in a swift coup. The October Revolution succeeded. Lenin pulled Russia out of the war with the harsh Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in 1918. Giving away huge territories. But civil war erupted. The Red Bolsheviks against the White forces, foreign interveners, and nationalists. The Cheka secret police enforced terror. The Reds won through centralized control, war communism, and Leon Trotsky's organization of the Red Army. In 1922, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was formally born. Lenin introduced the new economic policy in 1921, allowing limited private trade to help recovery from war and famine. He died in 1924. A power struggle followed. Joseph Stalin outmaneuvered Trotsky and others. Taking full control by 1929, Stalin's slogan was socialism in one country. He launched the first five-year plan in 1928, forcing rapid industrialization. Factories, dams, and steel plants rose across the land. But the human cost was staggering. Forced collectivization of agriculture met fierce resistance and triggered the Holodomor famine of 1932 to 1933, killing millions, especially in Ukraine. The Great Purge from 1936 to 1938 executed or sent to the gulags hundreds of thousands of party members, military officers, and ordinary citizens. Stalin's paranoia created a climate of fear. Yet the Soviet Union became an industrial powerhouse. On June 22, 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa. More than 3 million Axis troops invaded. Initial Soviet losses were catastrophic. Millions were captured. Leningrad endured a 900-day siege in which over 1 million civilians died of starvation. But Soviet factories were moved east beyond the Urals. The people rallied in what became known as the Great Patriotic War. Lend-Lease aid from the Allies helped. The turning point came at Stalingrad in 1942 to 1943, where house-to-house fighting broke the German Sixth Army. The largest tank battle in history at Kursk in 1943 followed. The Red Army pushed westward, liberating Eastern Europe and capturing Berlin in May 1945. Victory came at the terrible price of approximately 27 million Soviet lives. After the war, Stalin rebuilt the country with harsh methods and established control over Eastern Europe. The Soviet Union tested its first atomic bomb in 1949. The Cold War had begun. Stalin died in March 1953. Nikita Khrushchev emerged as leader. In his 1956 secret speech, he denounced Stalin's cult of personality and began limited de-Stalinization, releasing some Gulag prisoners. He launched the Virgin Lands campaign to boost agriculture and oversaw the launch of Sputnik in 1957 and Yuri Gagarin's first human spaceflight in 1961. But the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. Khrushchev's erratic style led to his removal in 1964. Leonid Brezhnev's long rule brought stability, but also stagnation. Corruption grew, the economy slowed. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 became a costly quagmire. After Brezhnev's death, short-lived leaders Yuri Andropov and Konstantin Chernenko followed. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev became General Secretary. Facing deep economic and social crisis, he introduced perestroika, or restructuring, and glasnost, or openness. He ended the Cold War, signed arms control treaties, and allowed Eastern European countries to break free in 1989, but nationalism surged within the USSR. An attempted coup in August 1991 failed. In December 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved. Boris Yeltsin became the first president of the new Russian Federation. The 1990s were chaotic. Shock therapy reforms caused hyperinflation. Oligarchs gained enormous wealth and power. The First Chechen War was brutal. In 1993, tanks shelled the parliament building during a constitutional crisis. Yeltsin's health declined. On New Year's Eve 1999, he resigned and named his prime minister, a former KGB officer named Vladimir Putin, as acting president. Putin promised stability and order. He prosecuted the Second Chechen War ruthlessly and centralized power through what he called the power vertical. Rising oil prices in the 2000s brought an economic boom. Living standards rose for many. Putin tamed some oligarchs, most famously Mikhail Khodorkovsky. He rebuilt the military. Dmitry Medvedev served as president from 2008 to 2012, while Putin was prime minister. Putin returned to the presidency in 2012 amid large street protests. In 2014, after the Euromaidan revolution in Ukraine, Russia annexed Crimea and backed separatists in the Donbas region. Western sanctions followed, but Russia deepened ties with China and other non-Western powers. Then, on February 24, 2022, Putin launched a full-scale military invasion of Ukraine. What was expected to be a quick operation turned into a grinding war of attrition. Russian forces faced fierce Ukrainian resistance, logistical challenges, and massive Western military aid to Kyiv. By early 2026, the conflict has lasted over 4 years. Russia controls roughly 20% of Ukraine, with slow, costly advances in the east. Heavy casualties have mounted on both sides. Massive sanctions have reshaped Russia's economy toward a war footing, while drone strikes and energy disruptions continue. Peace talks have stalled and restarted multiple times. As of March 2026, Russian forces are pressing a spring offensive along several fronts, launching large-scale drone and missile barrages, while Ukraine continues long-range strikes deep into Russian territory. The war remains one of the most consequential conflicts of the 21st century, reshaping European security, global energy markets, and international alliances. Today, in 2026, Russia remains the world's largest country by land area, spanning 17 million square kilometers. It is home to about 146 million people from over 190 ethnic groups. Its landscape ranges from the frozen Arctic to the volcanoes of Kamchatka, from the dense taiga forests to sunny Black Sea resorts. Moscow blends ancient cathedrals with futuristic skyscrapers. St. Petersburg still dazzles with imperial palaces and canals. Siberia holds vast natural resources. Russia has given the world immortal literature from Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, the music of Tchaikovsky, the artistry of the Bolshoi Ballet, and pioneering achievements in space. It has survived Mongol domination, Napoleon's invasion, Hitler's blitzkrieg, revolution, civil war, and the collapse of the Soviet system. Its leaders, from Rurik to Putin, have repeatedly bet on centralized strength, vast geography, and the endurance of the Russian people. This epic story is far from over. Russia continues to play a pivotal role on the world stage, its future chapters still being written in real time. What do you think the next page of Russian history will look like? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive history video. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Until next time, das vidania.